Hi, my name is David Straub. I teach people how their minds work. A business-savvy friend was advising me on my LinkedIn profile. After reading Emotions Expert, they said I had to remove it. We have yet to master that area. Then I had an idea. What if I built a booth and showed it around Portland? I could give people advice and they could let me know if I was an expert. Honestly, the response surprised even me. I knew I was onto something. Then I thought I should create a show so everyone else could see the magic in action. After all, once you see and hear it, everything will start to make sense. Welcome to Emotions Explained. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Hey, I'm about to get started on the show, so if you'd like to see what's going on, why don't you come on in, check it out. It's going to be really interesting. The premise of the event that you're going to see is pretty simple. Basically, I do this Emotions Expert booth and I dole out advice to people. It's pretty much like a snapshot in time. So I don't spend a lot of time with the people. I don't spend a lot of time on kind of the background of my model, which I teach them to help them better understand how they think. But in this case, we're going to cover at least a little bit of it so you can get an idea of what's going on. So let me show you how that's going to go. All the advice that I give stems from this behavior system that I created called the Foresight Model. To give you an idea what that is, we're going to cut to the event and show you how I explain it there. Foresight Model says that your consciousness is comprised of two processes. You look at the past and you plan for the future. The way you look at the past is called your self-esteem process. And the way you look at the future is called your self-confidence process. So for the self-esteem part, there's two questions you have to answer. It's, am I good and do I have value? Am I good is something that you give yourself, and do I have value is something that other people give you. And for self-confidence, there's also two questions. There's, do I have discretion, which is you kind of make decisions, including what I'm looking for and balancing the needs of others. And will I persevere, which is something that you do on your own. If you're able to answer them correctly, everything's fine. If you're not, you're going to experience a subconscious conclusion that is going to generate a physical sensation inside you, which is going to give you a misleading emotion. So that misleading emotion part is so key to everything else, but we'll be covering that more. So that's the basics of the model. Let's get into a specific example. You're talking to someone, and let's say you have problems with the do I have value. That tends to manifest itself in a couple of different areas. Am I smart? Am I strong? Right? So let's say you're talking to someone and you have an opinion on something and they disagree with you. And when they disagree with you, all of a sudden you feel a pit in your stomach. Has anyone ever experienced something like that before? Okay. So what's going on is that you're kind of going into fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? Your amygdala has kicked in, adrenaline's rushing through your body. But you're just having a conversation. Yeah, that's literally it, right? You're in reptile mode, right? But here's the thing. You're having a conversation with someone else. You're not under any threat whatsoever. But for some reason, because that question is not self-sufficiently answered, you're going to get this physical sensation that's going to put you in attack mode. At this point, we've covered the model, and I've also showed you a specific example of it. Now I'm going to ask the audience if they have any questions. Ironically, if not coincidentally, a person's actually going to give up the exact same example that I brought up. The reason for that is that, for better or worse, a lot of people have that negative inner critic working on them.
Yeah, yesterday I was in my cognition class and I started speaking and then my heart started racing and I just felt fucking like I can't run or something.
Were you worrying about what you were saying was smart? Did you think it felt dumb, or what was the
No, I wasn't thinking.
Right, you weren't thinking at all.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking.
One incident doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Oh no, it's multiple incidents.
But it typically happens when you're talking in class about a variety of subjects, right?
Anything.
So my first thought is do I have value or am I good, right? So it's a self-esteem issue. It sounds like potentially, right? Okay. So let's go with that. So now I have my typical questions that I ask to kind of focus on which question it might be. Would you say you have an inner negative critic? Do you have
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's funny you say of course, but not everyone has one, right? Well, that's funny.
That's the negative critic inside
Right.
of you, right?
Well, so here's the thing. This is a great interaction. I love this.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, so kudos to you. Okay, you're being vulnerable in front of a bunch of people you don't know.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what goes on in class.
Television, or I don't
Right,
know where
yeah.
this is gonna be.
Well, next time you see your parents, no. So the good thing about it is that, and this is a great way to deal with whatever the issue is, right? It's the old, if you're afraid of snakes in an elevator, you get in an elevator with snakes kind of thing, right?
That's why I raised my
Right,
hand
right,
yesterday, yeah.
great. When we have questions as to whether or not we have value, we're looking at our past, and typically we're looking at our youngest self. Do you remember being criticized a lot when you were growing up?
Oh, in school, in my classroom, all the time.
By who?
By my teacher, 1st through 4th grade.
Okay, so here's a good example. Think about how you would want to teach a class, and you said in 1st grade.
Yeah,
right?
1st and 4th.
So now think about what a good teacher is in 1st grade. Does it make sense that a teacher should be belittling their students?
Oh, of course not.
Okay, so that's a good beginning, right? So that's the first thing, is now look at the 1st grade self, and you're being belittled in class. Now, it's not your problem. You're a 1st grader. There's a lot of stuff that you're not going to know, right? It's the teacher's job to make you feel comfortable. So here's one axiom that we'll start with here, is 100% of what someone says and does tells you something about them, right? And and every single time when someone is putting you down, they're telling you that they do that to themselves. That's the first thing, is you want to separate the other person's behavior from who you are as a person.
Who am I?
Right? Seem like a good guy to me. You have a somewhat of a sense of humor, right? I'm the father of 3 kids, and you're supposed to get this. You're supposed to feel cherished just for existing. You don't have to do anything.
Right.
You just have to merely be there, and your parents have the love and think you're the greatest, right? That's the way it's supposed to be. It doesn't always turn out like that, right? Unfortunately, when you turn 18, now it's your responsibility to fix it. Emotions should be a standard curriculum of every grade, from 1st grade through your senior year in college, in my mind. Right? But we don't talk about it at all. But that says a lot about the school system, and honestly, just people being uncomfortable with talking about emotions. So let's get back to helping you. Number one is to distinguish when someone's saying something negative, they're telling you something about them, right? So you want to be able to separate that. The other thing is that you want to do is be able to reframe the memory.
Reframe the memory. Oh, I like that one. I haven't done that one yet.
Okay. And the really cool thing that they'll teach you in neuroscience is that every time you remember something, you pull it out of the memory into your working memory, and then you put it back. Which means every time you recall something, you have the ability to adjust it however you want. So now what you can start doing is when you start, when you're in that class, now you're going to start thinking about that 1st through 4th grade teacher, and you're going to how you belittled in class, and now you're going to add to, you know what? I don't think they were such a great teacher.
Add that to it?
Yeah.
They weren't such a great teacher.
So now when you're in class and you start to feel that panic attack, I want you to think about that.
I feel compassion for them because I know that they were also, bullied, and they had their own inner critic, and that's why they were doing that.
That is true. But, when you're an adult, you can accommodate people, right? I think that's fine. And I do it all the time. That's part of what I do, is I help people work through these things. But at some point, you have to make them responsible. Because if you don't, then the cycle keeps going.
Okay, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This interaction is a great example of what I do at my Emotions Expert booth and what I do with my coaching in general. And that's this. I help people start to question what their thought processes are. We all engage in these self-sabotaging behaviors, and they're driven by these misleading emotions. By helping people to look at that in a different way, it's going to help them change their behavior in the long term. Thank you for watching.